Lesson 42. How old are you? Look at the family in the picture. This is the father. This is the mother. He is her husband. She is his wife. This is the daughter. This is the son.
The boy is 5 years old. His sister is 7 years old. Their mother is 33 years old. Their father is 38 years old. How much older is the girl than her brother? She is 2 years older than her brother. How much younger is their mother than their father? Their mother is 5 years younger than their father. Who is the youngest? The boy is the youngest. Who is the oldest? The father is the oldest.
Are you the youngest in your family? Who is the oldest in your family?
How old is the boy? He is 5 years old. How old was he last year? He was 4 years old last year. 5 minus 1 equals 4. How old was he 2 years ago? He was 3 years old 2 years ago. 5 minus 2 equals 3. How old is he going to be next year? He is going to be 6 years old next year. 5 plus 1 equals 6. How old is he going to be 3 years later? He is going to be 8 years old 3 years later. 5 plus 3 equals 8.
How old is the girl? She is 7 years old. How old was she last year? She was 6 years old last year. 7 minus 1 equals 6. How old was she 2 years ago? She was 5 years old 2 years ago. 7 minus 2 equals 5. How old is she going to be next year? She is going to be 8 years old next year. 7 plus 1 equals 8. How old is she going to be 3 years later? She is going to be 10 years old 3 years later. 7 plus 3 equals 10. How old is their mother? She is 33 years old. How old was she last year? She was 32 years old last year. How old was she 3 years ago? She was 30 years old 3 years ago. How old is she going to be next year? She is going to be 34 years old. Next year. How old is she going to be 10 years later? She is going to be 43 years old 10 years later. How old is the children's father? He is 38 years old. How old was he last year? He was 37 years old last year. How old was he 20 years ago? He was 18 years old 20 years ago. How old is he going to be next year? He is going to be 39 years old next year. How old is he going to be 20 years later? He is going to be 58 years old 20 years later. How old were you last year? How old are you going to be next year?
I am an old man. I'm very old. Very old. I was 72 years old last year. I was 63 years old 10 years ago. I am going to be 74 years old next year. I'm going to be 83 years old 10 years later. How old am I? I'm 73 years old.